Um, okay. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good
Good
morning.
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 Good morning.
Morning. Cheeriness this morning. I'm trying to get to that level. Oh, it's almost Friday. Good to see you, Wendy, this morning.
Yeah,
Five,
you survived yesterday.
yes. Now we can get you a t-shirt. You survived Alderman Bauman.
Yeah, I don't have a license yet, so we'll see how survival comes out.
Yes. Yes. All right. I know we have a jam-packed agenda. People will start popping in. Let me pull up my stuff here. Okay. We don't have the August minutes, right? We'll get those out later. Didn't see them.
They were shared.
They
They
were
were shared on
shared,
the
My bad.
agenda.
Right.
I was like, oh God, what did I do? No, I didn't.
Ooh, okay, yes, so my apologies. All right, anybody have any questions on the agenda? All right, anyone have any, let's see, can we get a motion for approval of the August 2022 agenda?
This is Audra. I'll motion to approve.
This is Nancy, I'll second.
Thank you, Nancy and Audra. Any oppositions? Hearing none. Thank you. Okay, a couple of things we want to go over. Just the regular no-full stuff. So as you know, we have a deadline to submit at the end of this month. The goal is to submit the applications and the whole entire collaborative app on September 27th, just 3 days prior to the deadline. We've created a smaller working subgroup that are just focusing on putting all the pieces together for the application. That's just the actual application itself. And the group met yesterday. As you know, we've had some transition in staffing, more specifically with Melissa McGahee, who is now working at the county. She's been working with us for the past year with the COC No-Full Work Group. I had another conversation. She started with the county yesterday or this past Monday. I did have a conversation with her yesterday, and the county is allowing her to continue to work with us until October 17th at around 10 hours a week, which would be a good transition and help with getting Joanna, our other grant writer at the city, getting her transition into that role, because Joanna is now taking over Melissa's role, and she'll be working with us going forward on the COC application. Our goal is the work group will meet again next week. Again, looking at questions, specific questions, the entire COC has been very helpful in assisting with some of the questions that are pertaining to their specific expertise. Our goal now is, since we're getting to crunch time with this regular NOFO, to get things, to get the projects ranked by Monday, presented to the NOFO work group, and then the board. The COC board meets next week, Thursday, for final approval. Again, we'll be, as we're working on the application, which we're going to submit on the 27th, we will continue to be reaching out to you all if we have any specific questions pertaining to specific your areas of expertise. Anyone else want to add to this specific process, or with the regular NOFO? Any questions? Okay. All right, now we get to the fun stuff. The special NOFO, which is the dollars that are made available through HUD for the unsheltered population. So that one has a later deadline. That's October 20th. So a little over a month. And as far as the timing of it, we would need to get, and we've been having a lot of conversations about this specific NOFO over the last month or so. We've had some conversations at the NOFO work group meetings as well, see how do we best or take advantage of this specific opportunity. There's a couple of deadlines we have to keep in mind, and we'll be sharing with folks an updated timeline, but we would need to have our eSNAPS applications into the system for potential projects by the 20th of this month. So for us to gauge interest from the COC in the community, as far as anyone interested in applying for these specific funds for specific projects, we're looking at getting out this afternoon or sometime today a more simplified letter of intent to groups to give us just some really basic information on what groups are thinking about applying for and how much. I think the available funds for this is roughly around $6 million a year. Not that we would potentially apply for all those funds, but I think there's opportunities to apply for some of those funds, with a real focus on and priority serving singles. As you know, the majority of the unsheltered populations are single, but also focusing on some families as well. But again, this is like part two, right? To just our regular stuff. We have, our primary focus has been to make sure we submit a solid and successful annual NOFO application, which we will, but also at the same time, we have this second beast that we also need to look at and applying for. And it's not, we found out quickly that it's not a carbon copy of what the regular NOFO is. There's a lot more into this specific application than just what we normally do every year. But I just wanted to really, at this point, and I don't want to just talk this whole meeting, but just offer an open discussion or questions or comments on this specific NOFO, or folks have specific ideas. Please take this opportunity now to share, and as we're looking at sending out a letter of intent this afternoon.
Raphael, yeah, Jessica and I talked this morning really briefly on the county end. So you said the 20th, you guys have to have stuff in? And we'll try to formulate it a little more. We just talked this morning. We had been kicking around ideas for a few weeks with nothing necessarily that stuck because we haven't had time. But we definitely have interest in some sort of master lease program for folks who are unsheltered and building in some services with some partners here in the COC. Don't want it just to be a county project. Would like to have some partners. But the master lease conversation has been now brought up in numerous areas, including our affordable housing work group yesterday with some really good ideas from both Tim and Dr. Nelson and from other folks. And we're some of you may know, but we're seeing a pretty heavy increase on the street, the courtyard, King Park, and now we have some tents, unfortunately, in the old Clybourne area of a few years back. So we have some concerns. There's 3 as of this morning. There was 1 last week. So I think looking at a master lease process like this would be really helpful for the time it takes from the street into a housing component, and also give the client some flexibility to then move on to another program as well. So nothing formulated. This is as of like 45 minutes ago. But we would like to explore that.
Can you tell us, Eric, estimated numbers you're seeing at these specific locations besides the Clybourne? You mentioned there's a couple.
14 at King Park, 31 at the Courtyard, and 3 under 5th and St. Paul. And then off the McKinley off ramp, I think there's 7. So, just in a small area, there's like between 50 and 60 people, which in the grand scheme of street outreach is not insane. It's just quite an increase in the last 2 months. And yeah, all the teams are working super hard. Ashley's team, Honk, Community Advocates, everybody's working together. We're getting overrun. There's just not enough resources, just to be blunt. And so this might be an opportunity to utilize some potential master lease stuff to help with some of it.
Okay.
Eric, quick question. Do you have a sense that the individuals that you're seeing are new, or were they possibly at an ambassador or being housed in one of the hotels?
It's a fantastic question and something we need to do. So we just talked about this yesterday about trying to do an assessment similar to what Emily Whitcomb did when she was with us, which really saved us back then, to figure out, and we did it with Outreach Community Health Centers and Honk as well, where we figured out how many folks were newly homeless, longer term homeless, what they qualified for. And that helped in many ways, particularly with conversations in the community, because now we're starting to get hit up every day by folks who are angry, business community. And so we're looking at doing something similar again. We're trying to pull some of the initial data out of the collaboration sheet and clarity and see how far we get before we actually do something like that again. But that's something imminent that we have to do in the next like 2 to 3 weeks, Andy.
Thanks. And anything that, of course, anybody, we're all here to support whatever you need.
Yeah, no, the collaboration has been amazing. Like with Outreach Community Health Centers and you guys, everyone's great. Honestly, we've been more coordinated as an outreach system than I've ever seen, really. And Emily Kenny's team too, like leading that charge. It's just resources. Like I hate to be general like that. It's just it's just a lack of resources.
Is it, Eric, when you say resources, is it mainly just the funding mechanism, or is it the
it's a couple things.
inventory of housing?
It's a couple things. I mean, we don't have the hotels like we did during COVID. Like I know that's sort of the elephant in the room. That was such a great resource. And I know it's not the best resource for everyone. I totally get it, but it was a quick one. It's taking a while for folks to get housed due to just some of the qualification requirements of the housing program. So people are stuck in shelter longer, to no fault of the shelters. People are stuck in safe haven longer, like in our Pathways program too, longer, just because it's taking a while to get housed. So I think there's just sort of this, there's this, everybody's running against the wall. It's sort of this domino effect. And there's just a lot of tents being handed out, to be frank, again, that we didn't see for a while. And I know that's not the only issue. I'm not saying it is, but it does cause us to have to sort of chase quite a bit.
So, okay. And I know we're gonna be opening up the ambassador pretty soon. But so the folks that, you know, you probably don't know the answers to this yet, but the folks who are out, you know, just seen out in these specific areas, or I mean, they may say if we do get them in a hotel that it would take a while to get them into housing just because of some of the barriers we're seeing as far as accessibility of units or resources.
Yeah, and some of it is just like, Section 8, both us and the city, and we've gotten better on the county end. I think Demir's done an amazing job, like knocking out some of the old sort of antiquated things that aren't necessary. But I think honestly too, one difference is there's a lot of people who would take shelter spots on the street. We're just, there's not a lot of openings. And I think that's one thing too, like on our end, we're trying to figure out how we can be helpful to move the process along, but it's been like housing wise, but it's just been stagnant. And again, no fault of the shelters, their staff has been awesome. And I think it's that, and it's coupled with the last month and a half, there's like just a lot of tents being passed out, and we didn't have that for like a year and a half. So yeah, so now we're sort of playing catch up. The teams are. But yeah, I think the assessment is imminent. Like Emily, I know you're on. I don't know if you want to talk about like what you did back then. I gave people a little bit of a framework, but I think it's something that we have to look at doing, because we're starting at the county to get a lot of calls and emails from alders and county supervisors who are not thrilled with us, which is fine.
Yeah, gosh, that feels like a million years ago. It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it because it was pre-COVID. But we just created sort of a quick 2-pager asking people questions about like where they came from, how long they've been on the street, if they were willing to enter shelter, like all those kinds of questions, so we could understand who the population was, where they were coming from, and what needs they might have. And then we also made sure that we completed housing assessments for each one of those individuals. So we were able to give some good information about why we were seeing that increase on the street.
And that might be helpful too with the writing of this, that 15-page section of the special NOFO to.
Yeah, you know what we can do? I was looking at it and I know our numbers, it's not like 5,000 people to like 7,000, but like if we went from like 20 to 180 and we look at that percentage increase, we could put that in the unsheltered NOFA as a reason. Like it's a massive increase, like percentage wise.
Yeah, it's not the number, but yeah, it's a good point.
I think we also asked questions about like why they chose the location that they did, because I think we were trying to identify like what nearby resources were motivating people to be in certain locations, and a lot of that was sort of the meal programs and things that some of the volunteer groups were doing. So that was helpful as well for conversations around why we were seeing so many people congregated in one space.
Did it look at severity of need at all?
Only through the VI.
So the VI was part of it?
Yeah, we did the VI for each individual as well.
Because that's another big thing that's all over the special NOFA, not only that they're street homeless, but that we're also serving those that with the most service needs as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we did that and we were able to break it out by score, I mean, I know that we don't really use people's score as to determine what type of housing intervention we might offer them, but that is how the tool is designed to be used. So we would be able to do that, and it would be data backed.
Yeah, Nancy, thanks for that info. That's good. That's good to know that that's a significant increase.
Yeah, and I think the really good thing about working with Eric and the other outreach teams is we'll start collecting the unsheltered data monthly so that we can see August and September. Eric, like you said, it's definitely going to be higher, but at least we'll be able to track that. And then what Emily is alluding to, the trends, right? So what's the breakdowns? They're all singles, Wendy. We didn't have a family for point in time, at least not in HMIS for July.
Mhm.
I think we even asked questions like if the street resources were not present, would you go to shelter or would you return to like friends and family? Because there was a number of people who were there who reported sort of being there because they didn't get along with the person they were living with or whatever it might be. They were having conflict and it was easier for them to stay and receive
Yeah.
like their meals and support on the street rather than stay in whatever environment they were staying in previously.
And we
Mhm.
definitely
So-
can add that. Emily, you were on the call yesterday for our COC admin call, and we talked about, I was going to create a Google form to make it a lot easier to fill out, to track unsheltered, those that are outside, because the Google form, the way that it stands right now, isn't helpful in entering the data so that we can report on it, right? So I wanna make it a form so that it's easier and folks can fill it out on their phone or their tablet, whatever they have with them. They don't have paper. They don't have to use paper surveys, right? Because
We did paper surveys like it was
Yeah,
1912.
I know, right? So just something to,
Yeah.
just throwing that out there, Eric, that I'll connect with you at another time once the form is ready to go. But it sounds like that's the route we're going to take.
Yeah, I don't have access to it anymore, but Eric probably still does about what the questions we asked and the data we were able to
Just,
pull. So maybe you can.
Emily, I
combine
just emailed it to you if you want to send it out to people.
those. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Nancy, that sounds great. I also think, guys, having the monthly counts will be really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise I'd have to use the street outreach programs, and we know that that's not all folks that are outside, right? Or updated data. So I don't want to say we're going to use street outreach programs, because not everyone is unsheltered. Some are in shelter, and then some just need to be exited out, right? So
Yeah.
using those forms, I think, is the best alternative for that.
Yeah, and I think it allows us to finally sort of have a concrete narrative, like if it's good or bad. Like if things are going bad, like then we can have this narrative
Right.
asking for resources. Like if they're going somewhat good, we have this, and like we have it every month as opposed. Yeah, so I think it's a wonderful idea.
Mhm. So we're doing these counts monthly. Nancy.
Yeah, it would help if I unmuted, right? Yes, that's the plan. So we have July's in HMIS. August already happened, so we'll just need to get that data in there. And then for September, we'll start using the Google form. I think that's the best way. And then also, if there's questions we want to ask, we might as well get that on that form too, because they're going to be just the minimal, what do we need to report for the point in time submission? So we won't ask the full HUD
Mhm.
data element questions, which are like a million, right? Because I also know that while right now it's comfortable to be outside, come January, February, I don't want people's fingers to freeze off because they're trying to enter the data outside on their phone. So yeah, moving forward, it'll be monthly. And the good thing is that we'll be able to use, because we'll have gotten into like this routine of entering this data on a monthly basis, that come January, I can just pull that data out of HMIS and not have, a whole
Mhm.
thing about this.
Mhm.
And then also something to think about if we want to, for January point in time, to start checking that information for if there's any warming rooms,
Mhm. Yep.
because we already have the data. We'll already be collecting the data for hotels, which you can put in your narrative. If we
Yeah.
served almost 900 in hotels, so if not for the hotels, you can make the case that perhaps folks would have been outside.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Any other, thoughts around other groups besides the county doing some master lease projects that they want to share today?
So I'm sorry, I couldn't get to the unmute. So this is Andy. I think what we were, again, when this initially came out, looking at like, how do we support the system. And again, that the SAMHSA project that the county had was a really great project. And I think the increasing both outreach services and housing navigation, and a lot of what we've been talking about at that affordable housing work group is housing specialists that really are serving to support people while they're in permanent housing.
Mm.
So those are some ideas that we are thinking about at Community Advocates.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great idea on Andy's part, and we've talked about this too, even just internally at the county, in that the street outreach teams, all of them, are getting inundated with folks on the street, and having the ability and capacity to case manage and housing navigate while you also have a full caseload on the street is an impossible task. And it doesn't give a good lane for like very, consistent aggressive street outreach if you're doing that. So
Mhm.
having, Andy alluded to, the in between, so like the housing specialist and navigator, to essentially have the outreach teams refer to that person or that team to then take on all of the housing stuff so people can get back on the street. I think that's a huge gap, like even in general. Like I think we should definitely look at it for this, but also
Mhm.
just in general.
Yeah.
So I think it would be great to look at that, to Andy's point.
Okay. Nancy, did you answer Wendy's question on youth? How many of those were?
No, I'm actually running that report right now.
Okay.
Because it looks like the numbers are, there were 66 that had been served, 62 adults, and it looks like there were 4 kids under the age of 18.
Mhm.
And it could be just because there was no date of birth for them, so it'll count them as no date of birth.
Adults.
Oh, actually, no, there were 3 children between the ages of 5 and 12. One between 13 and 17. The majority were between 35 and 44. We did have 6 over the age of 62. So I can get all that data to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Am I safe in assuming that children 5 to 12 were in a family and
Yes,
not?
they were
Okay.
not, we only had one unaccompanied, but see, that's the problem with this report, because I don't have a full date of birth, they put them as unknown. But I did have one unaccompanied child. He was 7. I'm guessing he just wasn't connected to a family. So, data error.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions? I have the report out that I'm happy to share.
Mhm. So would you say 80, 90% men?
I would
75?
say probably, give me one second.
I mean, that's what you're seeing out there, Eric.
Well, actually, it's pretty even. There were 37 men. And the rest were women.
Okay.
Eric, do you have a feeling for how many of those are the couples that are always kind of floating out there?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, anecdotally, I think we've seen some pretty tough situations with some couples, and that is, as most of you know, it's really hard to get them in somewhere together that's not an apartment. So like a quick spot, like shelter or anything. We just had a situation like that at Greenfield Park, and they ended up getting a bunch of their personal belongings thrown away with medication and personal identification. But no, I don't have the number off the top of my head.
I just have one couple that was counted for July's point in time. I'm guessing there's more.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that, on this spending specific projects with this special NOFO.
We're thinking about applying for a small, like 6 units, master leasing for families. Just to try to give families someplace to go quickly.
Mhm.
And for some families we have with continual eviction issues, ensuring that they don't end up back on the streets.
Is anyone considering applying for supportive services only through, okay, coordinated entry? We got,
Yes, I don't know exactly what yet, but either like housing navigation or coordinated entry specific, I think that will depend on what we're also thinking about with regard to the home ARP. That's, so I'll know more once.
Mhm.
I don't want to put everything in one basket and then we don't have enough in other baskets.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But navigation, mobile screening, I don't know, something along those lines.
Okay. All right. Well, this is good. I think so you have a good foundation of potential projects that we could apply for. I mean, also keeping in mind, yeah, this application is not due until the 20th, but there's gonna be a lot of work that needs to be done from now until then. But again, the focus now is really getting us through this regular NOFO process. We have the staff support, we're working with with our grant writers, Melissa and Joanna. We've been meeting with Tim, who is one of the consultants that is going to be working with us on more strategy around the special NOFO. But it all ties into, I think, an important funding source that we will be talking for, even past the October 20th deadline is the home ARP funds, which I think will play a significant role in helping us fill some of our system gaps that we're already talking about for this specific special NOFO. I put in the chat just to remind, let's see if this works here. Oops, hold on a second. Okay, it did work. Just some of the eligible activities for the home ARP stuff. As you all know, Christy from UEDA has been working with us. She is also going to be on the agenda for the board meeting next week, COC board meeting next week, to kind of give the board an update and talk more about what kind of to do kind of a similar presentation she did for us last month. Probably a more condensed version of that. But again, it's extremely important that we get our board involved in this process and planning. So in looking at some of the eligible activities that we can do with the specific funds, which definitely align with some of the things we're already talking about. I just want to keep this front and center for all of us to continue thinking about where does your organization fit based on some of these potential activities, and then we as a COC, start making some decisions on how do we best utilize these funds. I mean, we can do things that we probably haven't had the opportunity to do in the past around maybe doing some development or purchasing of something or building or something that's key ready or something that needs to be developed or something even new, this is an opportunity. Okay, let's buy the ambassador in and turn it into that'd be ours, and we run it and we do what we need to do with it based on our needs. So this is where our creative juices need to start flowing with around this opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity, that we can extend these funds for 5, 6, 7 years. So again, I want to keep this on the agenda for meetings moving forward, because we're going to be submitting the plan. The goal is to submit the plan in late October, and then that's where the work begins. And as far as how do we spend the 17 or $20 million to get those? I think it's 20.
17
Money is the
point-
home.
Yeah,
Right?
it's like 17.3.
It's in the millions. It's a lot of money. So we just gotta figure out how to spend it right, and again, walking out of this knowing that we can have a significant impact. So yeah,
Raphael, because we have this meeting and then we have one more next month of this body. What I saw, maybe you guys already talked about this. I'm sorry that I was late. What kind of input or kind of like work can we do during this time to prepare for all of those, the regular NOFO, the SNOFO, and home? That's a lot that's due in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think it'll help to have all of you obviously involved in all these discussions, and maybe even with the home. I was thinking maybe we create a subgroup of the home ARP that really focuses on strategy, right? Similar to what we do with the NOFO work group, that we have dedicated folks who are interested in having further discussions on how, and again, bringing it back to this body, but just kind of the working group, because obviously we're going to need a working group with the home ARP funds to start thinking about how do we best utilize these funds. So I think that I think once, obviously we're going to review the plan before we submit, and this group will see that plan. That we don't make sure we feel comfortable in what we're stating as to what the COC and the community has gauged as far as what's best, what's in our best interest to how do we best utilize these funds, and based on what are some of our system needs. So yeah, so more to come on that home ARP, maybe sub-working group. And again, we just need to get everything in place to submit the plan, and we need to get the plan approved. Then once that happens, then the work begins. But any thoughts on, if you look at these eligible activities, 17 million can go quick, right? I mean, if we think about specific projects, I mean, if we buy a building for 5 million, or I don't know, just throwing stuff out there, it can go pretty quick. And I see Lisa wants to say something.
Yeah, sorry, I've got like sun in my eyes,
I
but
don't know.
One thought I have, and this is a beginning thought, is some reinvestment in capital improvements in our current supportive housing stock that's aging out of the LIHTC period and really doesn't have a source for capital improvements. So a couple of our properties really, we're applying for some of those WIDA funds for some. It's only $50,000 though. It barely would purchase cameras for security systems.
Yeah.
But those older properties, Prairie Apartments, Capuchin Apartments, are really seeing their age. So production or preservation of affordable housing seems like a natural fit. And then of course,
those supportive services in those properties as well, which were never funded by the COC and are or partially funded by matched services. But you know, our guest house partners haven't gotten a raise in 10 years. So that would be another thing we might consider doing, is actually investing in some of the properties that were both services and capital improvements, so that we don't diminish our stock of supportive housing.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen.
That's a really good idea. And I also do think it's, there's an opportunity, but you guys have heard me say this before, but I think that there's an opportunity to increase our, I'll say capital, in order to do some of the projects that might go with the snowfall really well. So anyway, that's all I'll say for now.
You mean, Emily, as far as like we're working, if we have a specific project in the special NOFO that this can help support it or increase capacity around it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I personally would love to see and would love to meet with folks who want to figure out how to do it. I think that, I mean, we're not going to have hotels again like we have for the last 2 years. And already this summer, I mean, you could see it in not just the point in time, but also like the day-to-day at our outreach spreadsheet, what outreach workers will say. Without that resource, we're going back to the status quo. And maybe even increasing a little bit from what we had pre-COVID. So I think that we stumbled on a solution that is needed for our community if we want to prioritize having people off the street. And if we don't, that's a whole other thing. But if we do, great. Thank you, Eric. But if we do, then I think that there's an opportunity to pair home with SNOFO dollars to sustain that, like Raphael, you had said, by the ambassador. But I don't know if we have, I mean, I guess I don't know, Raphael, maybe you have already had conversations with agencies that are willing to kind of put that together, who would be interested in, you know, owning the building, agency interested in providing services and applying for the funds and what that all looks like, those logistics. I'd love to be supportive in any way that I can. For that.
Yep. And I think those are things that obviously would have to be hashed out in some further discussions. Because yes, we can, there's the resources there to do something significant, but at the end of the day, there's got to be an operator of the facility. So yeah, that's definitely something we need to have conversations around.
Eric brought up before a master lease. What is a master lease? What does that mean? You just rent the building for an XYZ period of time? Is that what that is? Or am I?
Yeah, it can be a whole building. It can be units in a building, like in multifamilies. Like if there's 8 units, you can master lease 2. And essentially what it is the provider. So whether it's us, Milwaukee County, or a nonprofit, is the leasee. And then they sublease to the tenant. And that gives flexibility for people moving in to not be on a lease if they then eventually want to move on to a subsidized program in terms of My Home, Section 8, Housing First. It also allows, if there's issue, for the leasee to be the buffer between the tenant and the landlord around any issues in the unit. It keeps stuff like off their record if stuff happens. It also gives flexibility for moving in quickly. Instead of going through sort of the 3, 4, 5 week long processes that we seem to be getting into with some of our programs, we can move someone in with an open unit in like a day or 2 because the leasee has the keys, they have the agreement with the landlord. It's a pretty simple template. I can send it out to people. We use the same template for all of our master lease programs. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages.
So it's a kind of a guaranteed payment to whoever owns the building, right? So we lease it for the year, and then
it is.
Okay.
That's another great question, Carl. So what we do in a lot of programs is we have a set rate that we negotiate with the landlord that builds in the rent amount and also the average of the We Energies. So if it's like $700 a month, we usually pay them like $785 a month for the year to build in that We Energies cost that they pay. Some of our programs, the clients pay, if they have income, a portion of their rent back to the program, like with a nonprofit provider. So like one of our programs, WCS is the provider. So they are the leasee on all of the units. And so they pay the monthly rent to the landlord, and then clients who have income pay them 30% of their income. So it's money back into the WCS program from client rent. We also have programs where we just pay the entire rent because it's considered more transitional. And folks who have income can then save their money for when they move to another program and have to get stuff for their apartment, stuff like that. And the services are really important in the master lease. I can't stress that enough. like lots of services, case management, like, you know, having administrative oversight. So. You know, and you know, Matt Raymond does an amazing job. Like he's a great, you know, we've leaned on him too for his expertise on Project Bridge. You know, they run it really smoothly. So he's another great resource for master lease stuff as well.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the home ARP stuff?
So this is Andy, this isn't on the home ARP, but just thinking again about what Claire said about supportive services only for that special NOFO. And what Eric said just kind of like triggered it. I think the really effective supportive services only was case management payee that this system used to have. And then when HUD decided they didn't want to do supportive services only, that went away. So that was also identified in the gaps analysis as really an effective tool to help stabilize housing for individuals that have a disability.
Yeah, Andy, that's
Really good point, Andy. We have some people that are like risking going to back into homelessness in PSH now because we are struggling to find payee agencies for them. And so that case management payee also, I think, yeah. So if someone's interested in that, I think there's a compelling case there. There are folks on the street, many that have income that could potentially, with case management and payee services, start renting on their own even.
Yeah, I think even Wendy knows this, but we're starting a little pilot with Hope House, a rent-only payee program. We just did a contract with Wendy to see how it goes, where her staff, we're paying for a Hope House staff to essentially be their rent-only payee person. So they will be figuring out a mechanism to have their rent covered by Hope House where the client doesn't have to worry about it. So their tenant portion, and that they can do what they need to do with the rest. We're hoping this helps a lot with not only retention, but having to continue to move people all the time, which has become a big issue. So yeah, we can keep, I mean, we're sort of diving into this pretty quickly so we can keep folks posted on how it goes, but it's something we saw a need and could be something that's replicated for sure with other agencies here.
And not every agency is doing or has a payee program, correct? Only some, or all of you pretty much do this?
Wait, say that, do all agencies have payee services?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah. No.
No, well, and I think the other piece is how the payee services happen. So I know that, like, I don't want to speak for agencies, but like Outreach Community Health Centers does payee services if you are like a TCM or CSP, maybe CCS client, but not just for like being on the street. Like the street outreach team isn't a payee.
Okay.
So there's like a distinction.
Gotcha.
There. It's actually, there's quite a few logistics involved in being a payee. So I get like, it costs money, you know, you're like have someone that has to manage the bank account and stuff. So
yeah,
it costs money to be a payee.
So it's not common throughout our system, was what you're saying, basically.
I'm gonna state the obvious, but sometimes you have to, but so whoever, I guess, puts this stuff together, I would suggest over budgeting for staff costs, just knowing that getting people into these positions is gonna be next to impossible or without good salaries. I mean, so we have great plans, but no salaries and no people. And so I think there might be more people than me just thinking, well, yeah, it's a great idea. Who the heck are we gonna get to do it? So just a thought.
It's a great thought. I mean, I mean, we've all seen it, especially I think it's kind of become a bigger issue during COVID, obviously. But to find folks to fill positions, it's been extremely challenging. I'm sure everyone's still seeing that as an issue, even today. Okay. Excuse me. Any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on the home stuff? I'm going to be following up with Christy next week to see kind of where we're at. I know she's had some additional conversations with key stakeholders, but September, October, we'll get another update in October at this meeting, specifically, obviously before we submit the plan, but we'll see if we need any additional time that's needed to spend on it as a group. And if we do before the submission, we'll just set up another meeting to kind of review the entire plan before it gets submitted. Anything else on the home ERP stuff? It seems like we've got some, some thoughts and some ideas on how we can best take advantage of this opportunity. Okay. I know Emily asked me yesterday, is there anything I need to know about the agenda that I just speak about?
Raphael, one quick question. Sorry, I was on mute. So I know a bunch of us have talked to Christy like on and off.
Yeah.
Christy sort of is like the conduit for lots of things. She's great.
Yes.
I wonder if it would be advantageous to have this group meet with her before the next leadership meeting, like have a separate meeting with this group and Christy, just so we can sort of hear like the feedback she's gotten. She can report out on some of the ideas. You know, if there's stuff we haven't thought of, we can bring it up then. That might be easier than, because I know she's met with a bunch of us separately or like had little 5-10 minute conversations. That might be one way to do it, even before the next leadership meeting in like a few weeks, just and she can just report out. So then we know what she's feedback on. If there's gaps, we can give more feedback, get a sense of like the timeline for once the community input is then communicated out, the timeline on then project submissions and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I know I had something scheduled with her for October 4th, so maybe that day may work, and then we'll set something up. So I'll look at, because we're meeting again on the 13th of October. So maybe by then we'll have more information. She would have gathered some good information from now until the 4th, that we can have some more conversations.
And Raphael, I can commit by then, if there's a meeting set up, to have our county stuff. I think 4.5 is what we got.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, good point. All right. I'll work. Yeah.
Communicate it out to the group. Yeah.
That'll be great. All right. So let's.
We will also, just so folks know, we will also be incorporating services in our plan, supportive services for our home ARP dollars.
Okay. Remind me, Eric, is that 4 or 5 million?
I think it's 4.5 if I'm remembering correctly. It's between 4 and 5. Yeah.
All right. So I will. I'll talk to Christy and see if we can get something scheduled for the week of October 3rd. It's probably be on the 4th. So I'll keep you posted. All right. Any other questions on that? Now I know this is going to be kind of a standing item, agenda item, but just if anybody has any quick updates on some of the work they've been doing on their subgroups around the strategic plan they would like to share today. If not, can always send email updates to the groups as well, or to us as far as what, how things are going, but any updates from any of the groups?
I can go really quick on the affordable housing stuff, Raphael.
Yeah.
We met on Tuesday. Thanks to everyone who came. It was a great group. Audra, Dr. Nelson, Donna, Tim, Andy, Nancy, Justina, and Claire. I really think it's a wonderful group of people with great ideas. Nancy was awesome and talking through the gap analysis. She's going to have more of a report for us at our next meeting. We set our meeting cadence at every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. So we're going to start meeting pretty frequently. We are tasked with, in the short term, the updating the gaps analysis to an extent, which we're trying to simplify a little bit. And also looking at landlord risk mitigation strategies. And I know, Raphael, you and I can touch base about that fund. The Claire was awesome and reached out about to try to get a better handle on when that might happen, in looking at helping with some of our landlord stuff. What we're also going to do strategically is bring in T. Whaley Smith. It's in one of our next few meetings, because CDA, as a lot of you know, Community Development Alliance has already put a really comprehensive report around affordable housing, and we don't want to duplicate it. And we think there's bits and pieces we can take from that to utilize within the COC. Really great conversations around master leasing. Tim and Dr. Nelson talked a lot about it. Tim has shared some of his best practices with us. And I think also putting a plan together to look at annual gap analyses, moving forward, instead of having them sort of separated out by multiple years, really try to have one each year, so we can sort of see the trends, particularly within the COC. And yeah, I don't know if other folks on have stuff they want to jump in on, but yeah, I think we had a little delay in August. I was out for a few weeks. Some other folks were out, but I think we're now back to going to be meeting regularly. So we're excited about that.
Thanks, Eric.
Raphael, I've been super bad about getting my group together. And it's
Wendy.
coming back that we need to be prepared for.
That's fine. Yeah, I know you have your hands full. You gotta keep a building open. No worries. Yeah, if you want to have it again, obviously we'll have this on as a standing agenda item, but feel free to share with the group via email as well.
Do we know when Shelley's coming back to, because she had sent us off into these, do these things, and then when is she coming back to see how we're doing on our assignments?
Yeah, I think for us it's really for now at least, because we had her contracted till the end of, I think, was June, and then we had to figure out next steps with the company to see what kind of support we need from them. And I think after we're done with all of this, we need to reevaluate as far as how do we take the recommendations, short-term and long-term recommendations, into 2023, and do we need their support to kind of move that process forward. Now what we're doing the next couple of months is just really subgroups to gather all the information, then for us to do the implementation phase starting in 2023. And then we can look at pulling them in if we need them to support us in that.
So there isn't there isn't right now a plan for Spectrum to do any more work with us.
No, we're not under contract with them at this point. That ended at the end of June, but we can easily, I've been communicating with her, but we can easily bring them back on if we need them to.
So I will just say for our COC structure work group, we had some good work. We're kind of doing conceptual work right now. We looked at what HUD expects a lead agency to do, and found a great document that HUD actually put together like a couple decades ago, maybe 15 years ago. And so at our next meeting, we'll be looking into more kind of what we want in terms of structure. They put kind of 3 different potential structures together. In terms of a decision-making hierarchy, I had kind of drawn up a draft one, and we messed around with it for kind of what we would like it to be. And I can send that out. I'll say that I think I made Raphael a little bit nervous because we ended up taking the city as an entity off of the chart because the COC is you know, the body, the committees and the board and the full body and those groups. And we'll need to figure out a way to kind of visually show that the city is kind of the staff within each of those groups. But in terms of kind of decision making, we are looking at how the different groups within the COC interact. And then we're also, so our next task is structure, roles, and responsibilities of a lead agency. And then next we'll move to the board and what roles the board leads. So we're very conceptual, I think, but we're putting some really good thought into what an ideal COC structure looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there are other thoughts from people on the
Just
work
to
group.
jump in, Emily, real quick, is that I was looking at some of those structures from different COCs around the nation, and I found a cool one that kind of describes us a little bit. And I think it's San Antonio or something, and I forgot. I'll find it again. But it has kind of the structure we were looking at, and then it has sidebars with the county on one side and the city on another. And they kind of put it in their own way. Plus your lead agency, which could be whoever you have. So it does look pretty, it could kind of fit our map if that's what we're looking for. So, so anyway, I'll share that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting work for me. I like it, but I also like, that kind of conceptual thinking stuff.
What's good about this group too is that we have our board and board chair and vice chair involved in this committee, which we want to get. I don't know if any other besides David Nelson are on any of the other committees as far as board members.
Demir is also on our committee, so we have 3 board members and
Yeah,
3 providers, 4 providers. Anyway,
He's also on the affordable housing one, Raphael. David is.
yeah, that's what that was. Okay. But this is something I'll bring up again at the board meeting next week for interested parties that if they want to get involved in any of these 3 committees, that they can feel free to do so. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Okay, there was one more other. Well, first of all, I mean, yesterday I want to give Wendy the opportunity, if she wants to, just talk about yesterday's licensing meeting. A very important meeting. I think it was it's an interesting meeting. It was hard to listen to the beginning part of the meeting, just based on some of the conversations, some of the folks who were in opposition to this had to say. It's actually very disturbing to hear them speak and say the things that they did say during this hearing. But I really want, Wendy just wants to say a few words about it and just open it up for a discussion. So I think this is obviously an important issue that we all need to be familiar with and supportive of.
Thank you. And so first of all, just thank you to everyone that came and spoke on our behalf. That was really amazing and very much appreciated and needed. So thank you for that. I think most of you already know this was for the rooming house license for St. Cat's, which we didn't initially apply for because the city website said it was for for-profit businesses. And we're a nonprofit business, so they believe that's an error on their website, and we applied when we discovered that.
Mhm.
And so there were about 5 neighbors, I think, that came and had complaints. A lot of the complaints were those people and that kind of thing, and concerns about people using the sidewalk, which was weird. I mean, there were a couple that had like some legitimate concerns, but they weren't sure they were related to our building. I think
Mhm.
also several that said they were stalking our residents all over the neighborhood, which is just a little disturbing. And then separate from that, there was the alderman who was just really not trying to hear anything I was saying. And quite frankly, was acting like a bully. And I'm not, it's not a real fair system the way it's set up. I mean, he kind of gets to be judge and jury. So the eventual outcome was we were put on hold, and we need to submit an improvement plan. And we didn't really get a timeline for that or what it needs to say. So I'm going to reach back out to the committee, I guess, and try to get a little clarification on that. And that's kind of where we're at. And I guess after, so we'll submit that and then there'll be another hearing, Raphael? Do you know?
Yeah, they'll schedule another. I'm not sure it'll be aligned with their regular schedules, but I think these committee meetings are monthly. What I understand, or it'll be just a special meeting specifically for this to bring this up. But obviously they'll let you know, but we can do some digging too.
So, yeah, I don't know if anyone else that was there has can say anything better about it. It was,
Yeah, I mean, we work closely with Alderman Bauman's office, and he's a character. And some of it is for theater. I think the thing that was deeply disturbing to all of us was just the way the neighbors talked about the folks we serve and the folks that Wendy serves on the property. A lot of sort of these people, these women. And so I was just super stoked and proud of everybody who commented, Andy, Tim, Emily, everybody, Matthew even jumped in there, just about having a larger conversation about the implications of what that means when you talk like that, in terms of, the ability of our clients to live where they want to live in our community, that they're not these people, that they are community members, they're our neighbors. The other thing from like a practical standpoint that I talked to Wendy about, because we deal with police call issues all the time in our programs, is the police calls are undoubtedly skewed based on the way the neighbors were conveying why they call the police. For example, there's one woman said she calls the police 3 times a day, but couldn't confirm whether or not the people actually lived at St. Catharines. But when the calls are pulled, they're equating those calls to the St. Catharines property, which is completely unfair. They literally could just be people walking down the street. So I think that's something, and I told Wendy I'd help her with that with District 1, and Beth Lappin on our team can help with that as well. I think the other thing too, it's just sort of like the basic humanity of somebody is standing on a sidewalk, smoking a cigarette. Like that happens everywhere. It happens in Wauwatosa, it happens in Shorewood, it happens in West Allis, but they're equating it to the property because it's perceived to be different from the other wealthy homeowners and property owners in the area. And so I'm hopeful, number one, that they take this plan and just leave it alone, because there's not a huge issue like they said. But number two, a larger conversation about our clients living in areas that they want to live. So East Side, Bayview, areas that historically they haven't been able to live. They've only been able to live in condensed areas in the central city. I do think with Alderman Brostoff coming into office in November, him and I have met a few times. We have some real leverage to have a larger conversation over in that area. But yeah, kudos to Wendy for sitting through that yesterday. And kudos to everybody else for having her back. It was cool to see.
Thank you.
Who else was on that committee? Who else are the?
I was gonna ask you, because I know he's not on the licensing committee. So does it benefit if we are reaching out to those that are on the licensing committee?
I don't, so it's Cogs, Perez, Spiker, Dodd, and Burkowski. The alderman in the district seems to have a lot of power in the committee.
Can you say those again, please?
Cogs, Dodd, Spiker, Perez, and Burkowski.
Okay, thanks.
I will say, I think Alderman Perez was on your side, Wendy. I think he was, trying to mitigate neighborhood issues by saying, well, let's just get some more services in there. And he a little bit called CDGA out and said, like, what are you going to do to support this? And so I think that he was on the side of the COC and St. Catherine's and Hope House. So. And Wendy did say, yeah, we'll get another case manager, just, funding for that would be helpful. But I guess I'll just, now that I'm talking, I'll just put my 2 cents in. I think the neighbors' testimony against the license, really no one, except for people that said that they literally followed people home to find out that they lived at St. Cat's. None of the complaints were about the building itself. All of the complaints were about people in cars. There are people that do drugs. There are people that have their kids walking up and down the street at 2 and 3 in the morning. Like, none of that none of the complaints were about the building itself. It was about the activity outside the building, and could not necessarily equate the activity in the neighborhood with the residents of St. Cat's. And the residents of St. Cat's spoke, which was pretty cool to see, I thought.
They were really great.
Cool. Yeah.
So Alderman Bowman was just, I reached out to Wendy this morning just because it was just over the top, and, it's just not okay. And I know that, elected officials are representative of their constituency, but it doesn't give them the right to behave that way. And again, I just need to say this because it was like a recorded session, and he's then saying all of these horrible things about Wendy and her staff, and this is the recorded session. So I just want to publicly say that was wrong. And I think for the COC, a thought would be to have a concerted effort to reach out to all of our elected and say, here are the services that are provided in your community, and these are the organizations that are doing the really good work. So, because at one point, Alderman Bowman said to Wendy, well, stop saying they should be contacting you. When what happens is, if constituents contact an elected, then the response is that their staff contacts the people that are in charge of the services there. So again, I know this is him, but it's still not acceptable. And I think as a system, it was Wendy this time, but it's going to be another provider, potentially with 68th Street. So I think that we as a system need to kind of proactively reach out to the electeds and say, we're doing really good work to help save people's lives, and we need your support.
Mhm. Yeah. I think it's definitely even more important now as we're going through some transitions in leadership at that level. Especially with new alder persons being filling some of these vacancies, that we get to some of these folks to talk more about the work that the COC is doing around this specific issue. So as Eric mentioned, Rostov is, I've had numerous conversations with him as well, and he's super excited to work with us, and he's going to be potentially our COC rep from that position, which would be great. And he's very enthusiastic about it. So maybe he can be kind of our champion within those circles to help us facilitate that process. All right. Well, again, I mean, thank you guys really, and we'll be working with Wendy very closely to figure out what she needs from our end to support this this process and this plan, and we'll get some solidification as to when this next meeting will be, and we'll keep everyone posted.
Thank you all, really.
Mm-hmm. We'll get through this, and they said at the meeting, it's like whatever their intent is not to shut down St. Catherine's. I just think he just
No, their intent is to find a different owner for the building, according to Bellman.
yes.
But the letter says, right, Wendy, that if you don't have this license, you have to vacate.
Correct.
So
Yeah, and then exactly. And like, oh, we're not getting nobody out. We're not doing that. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, more to come. We'll get through this process, and again, thank you, Andy, for sharing that. I think it's more so now than ever for us to start building those stronger partner relationships with all the persons. The last thing I had was there's an opportunity. I don't know, Claire, do you want to talk about this training? I think you guys
Sure, just briefly. I had shared a training assisting with health insurance navigation, facilitated by Covering Wisconsin. It's occurring September 28th through 30th, and I want to say October 1st through 4th. I know it's a long time for staff to be away. Just shared in the interest of supporting the COC application and knowing that mainstream benefits and health insurance enrollment is like a cornerstone for what HUD expects for COC and ESG supportive services. We had organized up to 20 sponsorships for staff. So if you're interested, please reach out to Raphael, copying me, so I'm aware of who's going to be participating for the application.
Just to clarify, they don't have to attend every day, right? Because I was looking at the agenda and some of the stuff didn't really fit what like our staff are doing.
Right. No, they don't have to attend every session.
Perfect. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky when you register because they allow you to not pay anything up to, I think, $75.
Yeah, it's sliding scale.
Sliding scale. There you go. Yep. But I just wanted to gauge some interest, and, you know, obviously we'll support it and pay for the registration. But I was just gonna call them and say, you know, maybe we'll pay $50 a person of any member of our COC wants to attend, up to 20 folks, and see what they say. But yeah, just keep us posted. Let us know if you guys are interested. And then I'll just make the call, because I know registration deadline is in like a week or two.
Mhm.
And then we'll make those arrangements to get you or your staff to this training.
Yes, the deadline's September 12th, so. Like,
Next week. That's Monday.
Yep.
Okay. So we got one taker already. Yeah, just let us know. Shoot us an email. We'll make it happen.
mhm.
Thank you, Claire. Any other announcements? Anything else going on?
Yes, this is Andy. So as for the COC Leadership Committee, we've been reviewing policies. And this Monday, and I apologize I've talked to a couple people, but I haven't sent out the announcement. So from 2 to 3 on Monday, the 12th, we will be reviewing the safe haven policy. So that would be, it's a policy that coordinated entry, Emily and Kaylee and Matt and LaJewel have been working on. So we really want to get the input also from the outreach team. So the policy and the invite will be coming out today.
Thanks, Andy. That's a C leadership group. Thank you. Any other announcement? We'll have just a reminder, working with United Way, Christina, next month, Homelessness Awareness Week. We'll probably do the same format that we've done in the last couple of years, mainly virtual, and no Project Homeless Connect this year, but something we'll talk about and think about for next year, but more to come on that.
So,
Any-
Mike over at Guest House, sad day for us. Tomorrow is going to be Phil Connolly's last day. I'm not sure if Phil shared with you guys. I see heads nodded. Okay. I assume that he did, but for the larger group, Phil is taking a bigger position, a great opportunity for him. He's been here at Guest House about 8 years, 7 to 8 years. And this past year, working with him, as you know, was a thrill, very educational for me. And so I'm sad to see Phil go. I'm happy for him on a personal level that he's stepping up. So I'm in the process of hiring a housing director, and we'll, let you know about that.
Have you put out that announcement, Mike, for the position?
Yeah, actually, I've been interviewing, and I believe I have actually settled on a candidate. So now it's the background check and so forth before I announcement. So
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
absolutely.
Okay. If we have no other announcements, we'll end 5 minutes early. Thank you, guys. Talk to you guys soon.
Sorry.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Yep.